The following program is part 2 of 2 parts, each part an hour long. There is support material available at this website, including quizzes, handouts, and lecture outlines for all presentations. Consult the UCTV programming guide for the date and time that other lectures in the series will be shown.
Homopterans, another very diverse and large order. Homopteran meaning uniform, so uniform wings, they're uniform in texture throughout. And usually this refers to the first pair of wings, the top wings. They're a very diverse and extremely important group. About 20% of all damage by insects in California is done by this group. So you're going to see a lot of pests in this group. They have sucking mouth parts, and they're closely related to the hemipteran group that we just saw. So they include the aphids, the leafhoppers, and mealybugs. So you see there. The leafhoppers, Donna could probably talk about this a lot. She's seen a lot of these. Grape leafhopper, beet leafhopper are major in California. And we have our new concern with the glassy winged sharpshooter. Here's this very large hopper again, and this photo also shows an egg mass of the glassy winged sharpshooter there. Leafhoppers damage in 4 ways. By the direct feeding, and they're often found on the undersides of leaves, and leafhoppers like to get away from you. They'll sidestep. So in looking for them, if you flip over the leaf, sometimes they'll sidestep and crawl to the top. That's characteristic of this group. And so again, you could use the same technique as Donna said for the thrips. You can beat them off onto a white piece of paper or material and maybe more easily see them and count them that way. They oviposition in plant tissues, and this can also be a source of damage. They vector viruses and mycoplasms, like Pierce's disease. And again, here's the big concern with glassy winged sharpshooter, is that it can vector this bacterium that plugs up the xylem of grapes and makes it impossible for them to get water, basically starves them. And their excrement can help grow sooty mold, so that can be a big problem. Aphids, also in this group, we have the winged alates and wingless apterous forms. So some aphids do have wings. Here we see the winged form, the alate form of green peach aphid, and the wingless or apterous form. Color varies and should not be used to identify species. Not all green peach aphids are green, and not all potato aphids are red. Not all black bean aphids are black. They vary in color tremendously. And they also damage plants in several ways. So insects can do more damage than just by feeding. Aphids transmit pathogens, and green peach aphid transmits at least 12 viruses that we know of. They can cause feeding injury by stunting, and sometimes that's a symptom of plants that have aphids on them, is that they'll be stunted or they'll exhibit a curling of the leaves. And they produce honeydew, which is sticky and can get in the way, especially it's a cosmetic problem in a lot of crops. People don't want to buy any fruit or vegetable with honeydew and sooty mold on it. So they're problematic. We identify aphids in the homopteran group by these cornicles or tailpipes. All aphids will have these, and this is potato aphid. It happens to have really long cornicles, so it's a good example of this. And okay, this is the cauda here. That's also an identifying feature. And then the other identifying feature is these antennal tubercles, which you can see here really well. And the shape and the position of those features will help identify species of aphids. They have a huge reproductive capacity. That's why they're really difficult pests to get rid of. They're basically, the term used is born pregnant. These are some of those insects that don't need males to survive. They have asexual reproduction, and it's true, if you see a young, you can sometimes see inside aphids all the developing little bodies of the nymphs that mother aphid is going to release. And they have a mutualistic relationship with ants. The ants will protect aphids for their honeydew. So a lot of times management of aphids also includes management of the ants. If you don't manage the ants, you're not going to be able to manage the aphids, because the ants will bring them right back up if you wash them out, bring them right back up the plant. So sometimes we recommend using sticky tanglefoot to keep ants from bringing aphids back up onto plants. The scales are also in this group. Important in this area is San Jose scale, which is this bottom one here. And also we have soft scales in this group. And this is the brown scale. The armored scales, like the San Jose scales, are so named for their protective covering. This is an insect, but this is what you're looking at is the protective cover over the body of the insect. It's made of wax and cast skins. So this insect is producing wax and putting it over itself to protect itself. And the exposed body, if you peel up that cap underneath there, you'll see the exposed body of the insect, which is here. It's usually yellow to pink. The males have a wing stage in San Jose scale. That looks more like an insect, doesn't it? And that's the male to this female. The females are sessile.
What is sessile?
Sessile means it stays put. It doesn't move. And the eggs are laid under the cover. So when the eggs hatch into crawlers, the crawlers move out from that cover, and here you can see the crawlers coming out from under the cover to disperse over the tree. And they move from tree to tree. They're often found on the trunks of trees. Lots of plum fruits and stone fruits have these on the trunks. And they move from tree to tree by wind. All trees are susceptible to San Jose scale. This is a huge pest. Damage can be caused to the trunk. It can cause the trunk to crack. And the fruit. This is commonly seen on apples that have had San Jose scale on them. They have these little red spots on them. But natural enemies are common. And oils are often used in dormant sprays. Also included in this very diverse group are the mealybugs. Again, these are pretty odd-looking insects. People might not even recognize these as insects. They're covered by a powdery wax. And you can see their body segmentation usually is pretty visible. As you can see here, they've kind of got ridges there. And they usually have these long anal filaments associated with them. That's how you can tell it's a mealybug. They don't have a sessile stage. They move around quite a bit. They're mobile. Their eggs are laid in cottony masses here. And then crawlers, much like San Jose scale, they have this crawler stage as their immature stage, emerge. And again, honeydew is a big problem within this entire group, this production of a sugary substance. Psyllids, I wanted to include psyllids in the discussion of Homopteran because Parasilla has been a historical problem in El Dorado County. It transmits a mycoplasma-like organism called pear decline. It was a huge problem here in the late 60s, I think, early 70s, and accounted for a loss of much of the pear acreage. Pear decline, it is a mycoplasma-like organism. That means it's virus-like disease that's transmitted by this insect, and the severity of this disease depends on the rootstock, interestingly enough, that pears are planted on. So if you have a parasite on an Asian rootstock, once the disease travels down the sign and reaches that rootstock, you'll get what's called a quick decline reaction. The trunk basically walls off the organism, and of course that means that food and water also can't get up to the tree. So you'll see death of the trees like this. And this is a pretty common sight still today in this county, that you'll see these trees that have been ravaged by paradecline disease. The research was done, found that European rootstocks are resistant to this disease organism. So you can help control the severity of the disease by choosing the right rootstock. It's an interesting interaction between insect, disease, and plant. Currently, there's a problem. You hear about psylla. These days, there's a problem on eucalyptus. There's several psyllids that are pests of the eucalyptus that have been brought in. They're exotic pests. Eucalyptus is an exotic plant. Red gum lerp psyllid, and somebody brought in that sample of eucalyptus. That we'll have a chance to look at this psyllid a little later. So red gum lerp psyllid, it's a lerp because it has this, it develops the same kind of covering over its stage that we saw on the San Jose scale. Only this covering is made more of sugary substances, sweet to the taste. And there's a lot of research being done out of UC Berkeley right now. Don Dalston's group has been working on importing biological control agents to help control this pest of eucalyptus. Whiteflies, this, again, all of these insects included in the order Homopterans. Whiteflies are covered by powdery wax, crawlers, immature stage. You're seeing some similarities here amongst all these different genre. And damage, virus transmission, sucks plant sap, and honeydew and sooty mold. Again, all these are common problems of Homopteran pests. Okay, we're going to continue now with insects that undergo complete metamorphosis. These include, so these are typically the more complicated insects, the more advanced evolutionary. And these include the Neuroptera, the Coleoptera, the Diptera, the Siphonaptera, although I'm going to skip that order today, the Lepidoptera, and the Hymenoptera. So remember again, complete metamorphosis. These insects undergo major change through their development. They go from an egg to a larva or other, usually we term all of these immature stages larvae, but there's types of, sometimes they're termed specifically grubs or wireworms or specific immature stage, and often they go through several instars of that stage. And remember, that means they molt, they get a little bit bigger, they're restricted by their skin, so they have to molt in order to grow and increase in size. And then they go through a pupa, where they're undergoing incredible change, going from a larva to what emerges as the adult or reproductive stage. And as Donna pointed out earlier, and as you'll see, the larva and the adult can differ dramatically in how they look. You might not even think these two animals were related, let alone the same creature. The Neuroptera are the lacewings and the antlions. These are a beneficial insect order. Nerve, these are nerve wings. That's what the Neuroptera is derived from, that term. And it refers to the wing venation in the adults. The insect I have here is the green lacewing, Chrysoperla. And you can see the nerve-like wing venation in the adult. Neuropterans. These are generalist predators. They'll feed on about anything that they can get their mandibles into. The eggs of the green lacewing are laid on stalks here. Brown lacewing eggs are laid directly on the leaf. And I would just caution you, if you ever get samples in and I've got these eggs on the leaf, sometimes you can identify them, sometimes you can't. It's very risky to do any ID of just the egg stage. This is the larvae that hatch out of the egg. Comes this larva of Chrysoperla, and here you can see the sucking mandibles. They basically, they pierce the insect and suck, even though they have a mandible-like, so it's a modified mandible. And they'll prey on aphids and whitefly immatures and leafhopper nymphs and a bunch of different insects, pests. I don't have a picture of the cocoon, but they do spin a silken cocoon. And so sometimes you'll see just that silken cocoon in the plant. And people might wonder what that is. That's the transition stage from larva to adult. And the adults, some species are not predaceous, and they feed solely on nectar and pollen. Other species are also predaceous as adults. Cool order. Okay, now on to the beetles. Coleoptera. These are the sheath-winged insects, and that refers to the elytra. And they have heavily sclerotized forewings, so it's like having that hard covering that Donna showed you with the ladybird beetle, which is a beetle, not a bug. They have chewing mouth parts. And this is the largest order of insects. This is a huge order of insects. There are over 300,000 species in the world that we know about. There's probably at least that many more that we have not been described. 30 to 40% of all insects are beetles. So you can imagine the great diversity in this group. And that most of them probably aren't pests. The beetle larvae, the immature stage, they have various forms. They can be grubs. As you see here, this is sometimes called a grub. They can be in the click beetles have a wireworm larva. This is a boar-headed beetle, and you can see why it's called that. So the larvae can be diverse within a group as well. I tried to pick out what I thought were the important groups for our area. And in the foothills, I think wood-boring beetles are key pests in some cases. Down in Southern California, they have the eucalyptus longhorned borer, longhorned, so named because of its very long antennae. We have here the red turpentine on pine, and here you get a good view. Here's the head, the thorax, and those are the wings folded over on the back. There's the hardened wings, or the sheath, that are like a covering on that abdomen. So, that's the red turpentine. That's a pest on pine, and typically that attacks the bottom part of the tree. Engraver beetles, you see this little guy here? This is the typical wishbone-like form of the tunnel that the engraver beetle makes. And they infest the tops portion of pine trees. And then we also have shot-hole borer on fruit trees and other woody plants. Other beetle pests include, probably most of you are familiar with this one. No, this is not a good bug. This is a bad bug. This is the spotted cucumber beetle. We've got flea beetles here, common on vegetables and leafy greens. This is the type of damage that a flea beetle would produce by its chewing. The flies, Diptera stands for two wings, and this refers to the fact that in this order, the second pair of wings, the hind wings, are really reduced. They're reduced to knob-like structures, and you can't really see them. I couldn't find a really good picture of halteres in flies. But what you see here is the first pair of wings is there. It looks like that's all it's got, is one pair of wings. Now, all the other insects would have another pair coming out right here. But these insects have little halteres. They're little knob-like, their wings are so reduced that they have a little knob-like structure, and they help them orient and stabilize to fly. But it appears that they only have one true pair of wings. So Diptera, two wings. And again, we have the nomenclature. There's a lot of other insects that are termed flies that are not true flies or belong in this order of Diptera. Housefly being a true fly versus dragonfly in the Odonata, which we didn't discuss that order. There's about 26 orders of insects, and I'm only taking you through 12 today. The larvae in Diptera, here's the egg, the life cycle of a common housefly. Larvae are legless. They're maggots. I think you've probably all seen those in rotting meat especially. And they have reduced mouth parts, a hook, really, that they feed with in the larva, as well as reduced mouth parts in the adult, too. They're more specialized. I don't mean reduced meaning they're not as complicated. In fact, they're even more complicated because they've been able to modify their feeding structures. They've sort of streamlined them. Okay, so Diptera. Okay, walnut huskfly is a key pest in the Diptera family in walnuts. And we do have that pest in Amador County and probably El Dorado as well. And I'm not sure about Placer, Nevada, but I would imagine that walnut huskfly is a key pest there as well. In walnuts, this is the adult walnut huskfly. It lays its eggs. It's got one generation per year. It comes out from the soil, emerges from the soil where the pupae are, and lays its eggs, and these maggots hatch, burrow into the nut, and cause this kind of damage in the nut. Syrphid flies are beneficial Diptera. They look like honeybees, don't they? They look like honeybees. So if you get a sample in, you might want to check to make sure that this could be a syrphid. And how would you tell if it was a syrphid? You'd be able to tell because it's a fly, it's only got that one pair of wings. So you'd be able to distinguish that from a hymenopteron. Syrphids are beneficials. The adults, they're sometimes called flower flies. The adults feed on pollen, or sometimes they're called hoverflies too because they can hover. They've got that way to orient and navigate. They're better flyers. The adults feed on pollen and nectar. The larvae are beneficial and generalist predators. And here's the larva right here of the syrphid. It's kind of an ugly looking thing. And often these are great aphid predators. Tachinids are another group in the fly that are beneficials. We're now going to move on to the Lepidoptera. These include the butterflies and moths. And lepido means scale, scaly wings. And you can't really see it here, but if you ever have a chance to handle a moth, you'll find that often the scales will come off of their body and their wings. And people can be allergic to them too sometimes. This is the second largest order of insects, and the Lepidopteras are responsible for 40% of all crop damage in California. So how do you tell a butterfly from a moth? They're both within this group. They both have scaly wings. Butterflies generally are day flyers. Their antennae are clubbed or enlarged at the tip. So that means like the antenna, if it's clubbed, there's all different types of antenna. There's all different types of every appendage in the insects. But most butterflies have an antenna that would be enlarged at the tip, or sort of look like a golf club at the tip. When they're at rest, they hold their wings upright, vertically, when they're at rest. And the pupae are protected by a chrysalis. They don't form cocoons. Moths are mostly night flyers. You'll often find moths flying at night. They're attracted to light. There was one smack dab on my door last night as I came home. And I could tell it was a moth because it was holding its wings horizontally. So they're spread out, it's just sitting there like that. The antennae are usually not clubbed, and the pupae are protected by cocoons. Okay. Here we have an interesting looking caterpillar. Caterpillars have chewing mouth parts. Now, which end of that animal is the mouth? Is the head? The red end. Thank you. That's good. The abdominal segments, so here we have the head, here we have the thorax, and this is where the true legs are located. Always out of the thorax segment of the insect. Caterpillars have additional legs, prolegs, that come out of their abdomen, right here. These are not true legs, but prolegs, characteristic of the group. They have tiny hooks on the bottom of them that you'd have to have a pretty high-powered microscope to see. They're called crochets. And this distinguishes the larvae from all other orders in which there are larvae-like immatures. And also, the number of pairs of prolegs can help, it lends to their habit of walking. So inchworms typically have 2 pairs of prolegs, means that they have that looping. Armyworms typically have 4 to 5 pairs of prolegs. Codling moth, I would be remiss if I didn't mention codling moth as a key pest belonging in this order. It's a key pest in apples, pears, but also walnuts. Several generations per year, and that's, as Donna mentioned, temperature dependent, because remember, insects can't make their own heat. They get their heat from the environment, which is why we don't see many insects in the winter. It's very difficult to collect insects this time of the year. So codling moth, depending on the climate, can go through several 3 to 5 generations per year. The larvae, these are the adults, obviously, distinguished by the coppery band on the end of the wing. The larvae bore into fruit and they feed on seeds. They go, the eggs of the codling moth are typically oviposited near the stem end of the apple or on a really close. And so there's a very short period of time where you can control the pest, because as soon as that larva burrows inside the apple, it's safe. It's safe from predators, and it's safe from chemical control. So it's a very difficult pest to control. This is the proverbial worm in the apple, and this is the pupal stage, so it'll feed on the seeds inside the fruit, and then it'll emerge and it'll crawl all the way down the tree as a larva and come down and pupate under rough bark. Makes these little cocoons. There's a cocoon. And you can put a piece of cardboard on the trunk of your apple tree and trap the codling moth. Well, sometimes if you don't have a very rough barked tree especially, they'll prefer the rougher bark, but they will make their cocoons on the cardboard band. And that's a way you can monitor, scientists use that to monitor generations of this pest. So this is, I think, our last insect order for this part of the presentation, the Hymenopterans, the most advanced order, the wasps, the ants, and the bees. Hymeno, adjoining wings, and it refers to a tiny row of hooks on the margin of the hind wing, which I can't show you because I don't have a picture of it, but it attaches the hind wing to the front wing, so they have little hooks that adjoin their 2 pairs of wings, Hymenopterans. They're highly advanced and they have instinctive behavior, and they do exhibit, in some species, the ability to learn. This order is extremely important as beneficials because the bees and wasps are pollinators. I think you all probably realize that from your gardening experience, but you may not realize that growers, farmers, especially orchardists, almond growers, depend on having bees to pollinate so that they can set a crop. You need about 2 beehives per acre for almond pollination in the state of California, and that's probably a low figure because this is an earlier figure. That's about 700,000 hives just to pollinate almonds alone in California. So this is quite an industry we have bees on wheels. We have beekeepers coming into the state, bringing in hives, about half of the beehives, because there's not enough beehives to go around, and growers will pay the beekeeper to bring their hive in and have it be during that period of time when the flowers are out to ensure pollination. It's extremely important for their crop production. And of course, honeybees give us wax and food in the form of honey and pollen. Here's that carpenter ant problem. Ants being a member of the Hymenoptera. Carpenter ants problem in the foothill counties because we have a lot of damp, rotting wood potential up here. They're distinguished by their large size, and they're often black in color. You really can't miss them if you have them in your house. They don't feed on wood. It's a little bit of a misconception. They feed on dead and living insects, juices of ripe fruit, sugar, but they do their damage in wood by burrowing to make their nests, and they'll go into wood, they'll go into hollow spaces, or they'll burrow through wood to make their nests inside, just to get to that hollow space. Winged ants versus termites, because at a certain stage, the carpenter ants, the reproductive stage, will have wings and they'll come out. And this happened to me just the other day, because we've got carpenter ants in the house I rent. And we've discovered that we have a leaky pipe too. So I've gotten after my landlord to fix that. But it's falls within what I'm reading in my pest notes. So. And something came out, and we looked at it, and we're like, is that a termite or is that an ant? And you can tell the difference because the ants, typical of most Hymenoptera, they have a pinched little abdomen right there, thin waist. They have elbowed antennae, and they have few veins in their wings. And that differs from the termites that have, basically no little pinched waist. It's pretty broad there. They don't have elbowed antennae, and they have many more veins present in their wings. It's extremely important to know what kind of pest you have when you find it in your home, because these control strategies for these two pests are completely different. This is my last slide, and this is just to let you all know that there are many beneficial insects in the Hymenoptera. In addition to the bees, we have all of these parasitoid wasps. This is a trichogramma. A parasitoid wasp, a parasitoid, is a beneficial insect that oviposits within the egg of a pest, sometimes within the larva of a pest. So sometimes we say parasite. Parasitoid is specific for this group of Hymenopteran wasps that are beneficials. And there's many examples. Trichogramma attack many Lepidopteran eggs. Aphytis is a parasitoid on California red scale that's been fairly successful. Incarcia is a parasitoid on whiteflies. Typically, these parasitoids are really tiny and very difficult to identify two species. And they are able to kill their host, the pest, by either ovipositing within them and or something called host feeding, which means that the adults will actually feed on the larvae or eggs of that pest. Okay, see any insects on here? Well, here comes our insect. It's coming over to feed, probably. Okay. What is that? Any idea? Any idea what that insect? Oh, okay. You can get an idea of relative size there. An earwig. Someone said an earwig. How would we know if it was an earwig or not? Let's see. Where's that pointer? Let's see. It's an immature stage. It doesn't have true wings. It's not an adult. It's not an aphid. Now, it's not an aphid, and I wish I could focus this a little bit better for you. But it's not an aphid because it doesn't have the characteristics. If I'm looking at something, is this an aphid? What am I going to look for? I'm going to look for the tailpipes. I'm going to look for the cornicles. And this, although you can't see it very well, this doesn't have, it has a pointed abdomen, like a tail, but it doesn't have tailpipes. Is this an insect? You can almost see. Yes, it is. It's got three pairs of legs, 6 legs. It's an insect. It's not a big-eyed bug, but God, its eyes do look. They look not a grasshopper, but it's related to the hoppers. This is a leafhopper nymph. That's a leafhopper nymph, and I don't know why he's not moving. He's not very happy. It might be, you know what might be going on there is he might be in between molting. You know, he might be because he's not moving, and leafhoppers usually are fairly active, and that could be why the head looks a little. He might be going into a larger instar. It's just a guess. This is what I was looking for. This guy right here that's moving. Let's see if I can figure out where my pointer is in relation. Okay, this is really tricky to do. That guy right there. Oh, and there's the adults. What are those? Any ideas?
Earwigs.
No. Because they're brown, they're earwigs? They kind of look like them? You know what? It's not really fair to quiz you like this either because you can't quite see the features that you need to with this magnification. But you would see if you had a really good magnification. And the other reason why they're not earwigs is earwigs don't have that immature, that little yellow immature stage associated with them. These are Thysanoptera. These are thrips, western flower thrips. Thrips, always with an S. You say thrip, entomologists will go nuts. And so that you can see that's the nymph right there. And oftentimes when you see these, they'll be, they're very difficult to see without your hand lens. You can see them pretty well with a hand lens. As we said before, it's easier to knock them out onto a piece of paper to get them out of those tightly confined spaces that they like to live in. Often found in flowers. I think this is more of a nuisance pest in the case of flowers. People don't. If it's a really bad infestation, they can cause the petals to fall off, though. This insect right here. Ooh, and you can see that identifying feature so well. I know it's hard. These are aphids, homopterans. And you can see the cornicles. Oh, there's all different stages. This is the cotton melon aphid. It has many. Here's the cornicles standing straight up there. There's our western flower thrips coming in on the scene. And a western flower thrips nymph. They're looking for food. They're going to come over. And I lost that guy. It had the cornicles so nice, but there he is. Or she is, probably. Right there, those tailpipes. That's what you look for to identify aphids. Now we'll see if we can get this guy real quick. Oh, there he is. What was that? A leaf miner. Leaf miners are flies, dipteras. They're common in vegetable crops. A big problem in the Salinas Valley where I came from most recently. Leaf miners. What's this? That's a leaf miner. That's the same insect that you just saw in its immature stage. This is really cool. I forgot to ask people, and seeing that it was so cold, snow here last week, I didn't think many people would have the opportunity to collect insects. But somebody did bring in this. Looks like a scale, doesn't it? It does. It looks a lot like a scale. That's a very good guess. Could be a scale. This is off the eucalyptus. And this is the red gum lurpsilid that somebody brought in. They found it. What county are you from? Placer. So you can tell how sugary this is. And I'm just wondering, there's the insect. It's under that sugary cap. So it's, it's evolved a way to protect itself. And that is actually, if I can focus it a little bit better, that's your insect under there. What is that? What could that be? Oh, it's great. It's great because you can see almost those chewing mouth parts up there. But if I flip it, you can maybe also see some other legs that it has. This is a navel orangeworm larvae that they're rearing down in Kearney. This is a pest of stone fruits, and the adult is a moth. That's a true bug. And you can tell it's a true bug because you can see this is a hard one because sometimes they're colored. But this is the scutellum right there. Right there. A hemiptera, hemi, half. I mean, you can almost figure out what these are if you think about the order name. Half of a hardened wing and the end of it membranous. I wanted to show you the immature that just crawled away, but the immature, see, it looks a little bit different. And you can see the wing pads developing. This group of insects does not have complete metamorphosis. It's got gradual metamorphosis. So it's got those external wing pad development, and the nymphs look a lot like the adults, can be different in color. On break, I was standing over there by the desk, and somebody said, "My bonsai's dying, what's wrong with it?" And I hesitated for a moment, and then I looked at it, and I knew what was wrong with it just by looking at it. I thought, oh, this might be good for the class. So this is what the plant looks like. It's exhibiting, some complete dieback of branches. It's got, and I'll put one of these under, and this is an excellent example of this. It's got speckling on the leaves. Thrips. That's a good guess. Could be thrips. So that's what the leaf looks like. It could be a number of things, couldn't it? I mean, it could be, that leaf's dying. It's losing. It's chlorotic. Stippling in the leaves like that. Now, if I flip this over and looking at it, I might want to look at the underside and see if I can find anything on the underside. What are those? Do you have any idea what those black spots are on there? Brass. Yeah. Can you? And there you can see the pest. It's right there. Can you see it? If I had higher magnification, I would ask you if this was really an insect. Because we didn't talk a lot about another group that are also key pests. But they're not insects. They've got 8 legs. It's a mite, exactly. It's a spider mite. So this problem is a spider mite problem. Yeah, we also picked up some pinned specimens, which are probably going to be a little easier to show you. Not as fun, but they won't move around. This is the green lacewing. This is Chrysoperla. It's a neuropteran. It's got nerve-like wings, nerve-like venation. And someone also tried to pin the immature. This is really difficult to do this, preserve these well. But the larva, I've got 2 of them on here. And at least you can see the mandibles. How many people came here hating insects? Oh, a few. Did this class, do you still hate them? You still hate them. Some people really hate insects, and some people they're almost paranoid about insects being a problem. And I say this because you may, in the course of your career as a master gardener, get a phone call from someone who thinks they've got insects on their skin, or lice, or bed bugs, because there are many insects that truly do cause human health problems. But I bring this up because I want you to be aware that there's also a very well documented syndrome called delusory parasitosis. And this is a syndrome in which an individual is convinced that the symptoms that they have, which are very real symptoms, they are being caused by insects. And I worked in Monterey County right before I came here, and there were a couple of individuals in that county who consistently sent the farm advisor there samples from their hair, from their scalp, skin that they had scraped off of themselves. And this is it's disturbing, but it's a very, very serious problem. And the farm advisor would analyze all these samples and not see no evidence of insects. And so this person was suffering from delusory parasitosis. And if that ever happens to you, you should let your farm advisor know. It's extremely important that they get themselves checked by a doctor, that they go to a doctor, their physician, someone who's understanding and caring, because some of these symptoms are very real, or they all are very real to the individual, and they could be caused by other very serious problems. On the one hand, it could be anything from a skin disease to just an allergic reaction to some shampoo or something. So I wanted to mention that. And there is a pest notes on that problem because it is serious.
Yeah, but you don't want to say, we have a pest note on this, it's all in your mind.
Right, you don't.
And there's
That's
a
true.
really strong probability that you might run into somebody. We get these people in the office pretty much every year, our master gardeners, and I know I help the master gardeners up here, and maybe they'll just give you a bag of lint or something. Just, deal with it. But any time that you think there are health concerns or health issues, you really ought to refer it over to the advisor, because there are plenty of other real insects that probably you want a secondary opinion on. Bed bugs would certainly be one. Lice, cone nose bugs, some of the blood-sucking true bugs that will pierce people. So anytime you get something that's hurting people, you probably want to talk to the advisor about that, okay? That's kind of a general rule I have out there anyway. And often we want to turn them over to a doctor anyway.
Looks like a tick. Is it a tick? No. You can tell that right away. It doesn't have four pairs of legs. These guys were alive yesterday, and I feel kind of badly that maybe they kicked the bucket on me. What kind of wings does that insect have?
It's like beetle wings.
It's like beetle wings. Yes, it's a beetle. That's a beetle. That's excellent. Wow. And if I could, if it. Well, maybe it might be playing dead. If I could show you its head, you would be able to probably deduce what type of beetle it is, because it has a really big snout. Oh, see, I saw that one moving. And they will play dead. And actually, it's not dead. See, these guys play dead all the time. They'll fall off plants and play dead. Yeah, this is a weevil. This happens to be a problem. This is a rice water weevil. There's a couple weevils that affect horticultural plants. Black vine weevil is a problem in ornamentals. But weevils are easily identified by their snouts. They have that really elongated head, so that's part of its head, and its antennae are coming out, and you can see their clubbed antennae. What kind of damage what kind of insect, could you say what kind of insect did this damage? Would you have a guess? Sucking insect? Sucking insects would, no, that's the weevil from before. The weevil didn't do this damage, actually. But sucking, if it was a sucking insect, then you would maybe see pinpoint types of necrosis. But if you see really ragged edges, it's got to be something with chewing mouth parts, and that's about as far as you can go. And you know that it's an insect with chewing mouth parts. It could be a moth larva. It could be a beetle. Okay, so if you get this and you flip it over, you all recognize this. What group is this in? Is it a fly? Is it a moth? It's a homopteran. It's in the groups with the aphids, and I'm wondering if I can find the immatures. So part of my point in showing this sample to you is that sometimes, actually often, you'll get a plant sample that might have an insect on it. It might have damage on it as well, but the two may not be related. Just because insects are present on a plant doesn't mean that they are causing the plant problem. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. And the white flies didn't make those big chewing holes. Those were done by caterpillars earlier. So that's what I wanted to show you there.
I thought of something that we really didn't talk to you very much. We're giving you all these details, but as master gardeners, you're going to get phone calls about insects, and people will ask you how they should bring them in. So how do you handle insect specimens? Sometimes these little details we forget. And one of the best things you can possibly do is if a person has the plant material and the insect, get both if you possibly can. Usually they're going to bring it in a Ziploc bag. That's okay, but you don't want to keep them for long in a Ziploc because it starts to get moist and moldy. If it's going to be any kind of period of time that you're going to have to store them, put them in a container, a cottage cheese or some kind of plastic container, and throw them in the freezer. That'll kill them. It also keeps them nice and moist. If you let them sit out, the insects sit and dry out, then it gets very difficult to get in and manipulate them and move those wings like some of the things you've seen Lynn doing. As you start prodding around, you break off legs, you break off antennae, or they'll even break when you transport them. So if you can get people to keep them moist by either throwing them in the freezer or keeping them in a plastic bag for a short period of time, you can have them put some samples in alcohol. That sometimes works as well.
This is one example we have of a pinned Hymenoptera. This is a paper wasp. Beautiful. Pinched waist again. You can see its antennae. I don't want to touch this because I don't want it to fall apart. But it's hard to see two pairs of wings there. This is I wanted to show you this because this is a beneficial insect. It's a predator not on other insects, but on an invasive weed. This is the Klamath weed beetle. Klamath weed, St. John's wort. Some of you Hypericum might know that. It's a problem, especially in rangeland. Can be considered beneficial as well, but it's invasive weed, and this beetle, this beautiful beetle, has been imported to help control it. And when we have our weed science class next month, we'll learn more about biological control of plants, of plant pests. Oh, little tiny antennae. Can you see the halteres on this? This is a syrphid fly.
And see the wing venation? See how you could see those veins in the wings very easily and use those as identifiers, the shape of those cells within the wings.
Yeah, and again, it looks like a bee. So don't be fooled by color markings. Again. Do you have anything else, Donna?
I don't think so. Oh, yes, there was one comment. Someone wanted us to mention again the pest notes, that maybe you don't know what we're talking about when we said pest notes. Okay, pest notes are publications that are available through the University of California. We have 60-some different pest notes now that are written on our most common problems that you will run into as master gardeners. It typically has diagrams of the life cycle, of the identifying feature of the pest, and then it talks about control. So that's one of the easiest way for you to get information to give advice to people, and then you give them something to take home. They are available on the internet as well. It's ipm.ucdavis.edu. I think it's different, but it's always different than I think it's.
The preceding program was part 2 of 2 parts, each part an hour long. There is support material available at this website, including quizzes, handouts, and lecture outlines for all presentations. Consult the UCTV programming guide for the date and time that other lectures in the series will be shown.
It's the definitive guide to gardening, produced by the University of California. The California Master Gardener Handbook contains over 700 pages of in-depth information on topics such as soil, fertilizer and water management, plant propagation, weeds and pests, lawn care, landscape design, home vegetable gardening, and the wide variety of garden crops that are grown in the Golden State. The chapters in this handbook provide helpful information on selecting varieties, planting, growth cycles, pruning, irrigation, and harvesting. The California Master Gardener Handbook is available along with other gardening publications on the A&R Catalog website at anrcatalog.ucdavis.edu.